Everybody, my name is Dennis Levin, and I'm a retired pastor here, even though I look like I'm active. But today's special because I'm baptizing my great-granddaughter, Terul Ruth, and so I got all gussied up for it. Just want you to feel welcome here at Wesley Bible class, and we are studying 1 Samuel and the 24th chapter of 1 Samuel. There's some real important things to learn from this chapter that have to do with not only the transitions of power, but also things that happen in our individual lives. So there's some precedent set here in the Old Testament that I think is important, and you'll see that this sort of thing is being amplified all the more with Jesus' teachings in the New Testament. So here we go. The background is that David is running from Saul. Saul has an army out looking for him, and David has about 600 ruffians. They are people of ill repute, and they're trying to hide, and they're doing escape and evasion. What we said in the army, it's escape and evasion. Okay, so we'll see how that turns out. Okay. When Saul returned from following the Philistines, Saul was chasing David, and then there was a Philistine attack, and so he broke off the pursuit and went after the Philistines, which is what a king should do. Okay. Saul returned from following the Philistines. He was told, David is in the wilderness of En-gedi. Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men out of all Israel and went to look for David and his men in the direction of the rocks of the wild goats. So, how about that? Wild goats. All right, so he became a wild goat. He came to the sheepfolds beside the road where there was a cave, and Saul went in to relieve himself. They don't get into a whole lot of details about that, which is good. The expression that they use was that he went in, this is an Old Testament euphemism, but he went in to cover his feet. Okay. So, but people would be confused by that. So in the new RSV, they said he went in to relieve himself. So, okay, now I get it. All right, here we go. Now David and his men were sitting in the innermost parts of the cave. The men of David said to him, "Here is the day of which the Lord said to you, I will give your enemy into your hand, and you shall do to him as it seems good to you." Then David went and stealthily cut off a corner of Saul's cloak. Afterward, David was stricken to the heart because he had cut off a corner of Saul's cloak. What's the significance of that? Okay. What becomes manifest in this whole thing is that David is not going to kill Saul because Saul is God's anointed. Okay, so anything that David does to take away from the monarchy of Saul is an affront to God. Okay, that's a very important concept as we get into a little bit later. Saul has a royal robe. When David cuts off a section of the royal robe, it is an affront to the monarchy. He is destroying something of royal consecration. And so he has remorse over that, according to this. He has remorse over that as if he had actually killed Saul. Okay? We don't live in a monarchy, thank God. I think we just celebrated that yesterday. Glad to do it. Finally, people from across the pond are figuring out that it's probably a good thing that we did it, and for our sake and for theirs. So everybody seems to be celebrating. All these foreigners are getting up at the games and singing our national anthem and waving American flags and eating our food and liking it. So here we go. Okay. Afterward, David was stricken to the heart because he had cut off a corner of Saul's cloak. He said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed, to raise my hand against him, for he is the Lord's anointed." So David rebuked his men severely and did not permit them to attack Saul. Then Saul got up and left the cave and went on his way. All right, what's what's the significance of all this? Okay? Understand that when David commissions this to be written, he is king. All right? And what is the last thing that a king wants? A king does not want anybody to off the king. So you don't do anything against the Lord's anointed. David is setting a precedent against a coup that might happen to him. So if you do something to the Lord's anointed, you're doing it to the Lord. It's like an unforgivable sin. Okay? So regicide is not cool with God. That's the point that David is trying to get across. He didn't kill Saul because Saul was the Lord's anointed. David is also the Lord's anointed. But he's not going to supersede Saul. He's not going to commit a coup against Saul, because that sets a bad precedent for the next monarch. Okay? Afterward, David also rose up and went out of the cave and called after Saul, "My lord the king." When Saul looked behind him, David bowed with his face to the ground and did obeisance, which means that if Saul wanted to off him, that was a good opportunity to do it, right? David is saying, whatever you want to do, king, it's good with me, all right? Which is another characteristic of monarchy. The king has an absolute right to do whatever the king wants to any of the king's subjects. So by bowing to Saul, who wants to kill him, okay, David is saying to the king, if you want to kill me, that's okay too. So everybody who is under the authority of a king can be assassinated without, any repercussions to the king. And this comes into play a lot with David, because he offs a lot of people. Okay. David said to Saul, "Why do you listen to the words of those who say David seeks to do you harm? This very day your eyes have seen how the Lord gave you into my hand in the cave, and some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not raise my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, see the corner of your cloak in my hand, for by the fact that I cut off the corner of your cloak and did not kill you, you may know for certain that there is no wrong or treason in my hands. I have not sinned against you, though you are hunting me to take my life. May the Lord judge between me and you. May the Lord avenge me on you, but my hand shall not be against you. As the ancient proverb says, out of the wicked comes forth wickedness, but my hand shall not be against you." Okay? So David is saying, you're wicked and I'm not. Okay? Against whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom do you pursue? A dog, a single flea? May the Lord therefore be judge and give sentence between me and you. May he see to it and plead my cause and vindicate me against you. All right. So David has said to the king, you not only have royal authority, you also have an army. And I've got 600 guys. Okay? And what good is that against your army? You've come out against a dog, against a flea, I'm nothing. What's the big deal? Why do you have to bring all these people to kill me? You've got all kinds of power. But he says, I'm leaving it up to God. God's going to do what God's going to do. But it ain't going to be me. That's what David's saying. Okay. Now this gets interesting. When David had finished speaking these words, Saul said, "Is this your voice, my son David?" Saul lifted up his voice and wept. He said to David, "You are more righteous than I, for you have repaid me good, whereas I have paid you evil. Today you have explained how you have dealt well with me, in that you did not kill me when the Lord put me in your hands." Now understand, they both agree that the opportunity was God-given. Okay? Now what's going on here? This is another aspect of the Davidic kingship. The king is under God's control, and God's control only. So the king is only accountable to God, not to anybody else. So God has set this up, this opportunity for them to destroy each other or to reconcile. Okay? God's given them the choice of what to do, but God set up the situation. And a lot of times, we find that God puts us in positions very often where He gives us a situation and then He gives us a choice. You have an opportunity to do good, or you have an opportunity to do evil. And when we pray the Lord's Prayer, what do we say? Lead us not into temptation. Okay? Please don't give us a situation where we have to make a choice. That's what we're saying in the Lord's Prayer. You know? Just, we're cool, just, don't put me to a time of trial. Okay? But God does. We're not going to get away with that. All right? Now I know that you shall surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. Now Jonathan came to David and told David that Saul knows that David is going to be the king. Okay? He says even Saul knows this. And it's one thing to hear it from Jonathan, but now he hears it directly from Saul. Okay? Swear to me therefore by the Lord that you will not cut off, and that action verb is the same as when he cut off his robe. Okay? That you shall not cut off my descendants after me, and that you will not wipe out my name from my father's house. So David swore this to Saul. Then Saul went home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold. Okay. I want to get into this because I think this story brings up an important issue for us today, and also the teachings that Christ had. There is a blood feud between these two guys. Okay? Now there are people in my life who have greatly offended me. And there are people in your life who have greatly offended you. Okay? And we get to a point where we say, I'm not going to have anything to do with that person ever again. We tend to take these things and put them on just a personal level. It's between me and them. Okay? That's what we think. We think that the action, the attitude, the personality, the contempt, all of that sort of stuff is just between me and them. Okay? And then my response. It doesn't have to do with anybody else or how anybody else feels about them, although some people carry it to the point where not only do I hate you, this is a middle school girl thing. Not only do I hate this person, but I don't want anybody else to have anything to do with this person either. And so I'm going to say things about them that might be true, but might not be true. I might lie about them, just to destroy whatever relationship that person might have with somebody else. Okay? How did Saul get into this attitude about David? Were there realistic issues that were going on between Saul and David? Yes, indeed. When Samuel went and anointed David to become king, that was effectively a coup against the king. So there was a real issue, okay? There was a real issue. And of course, Saul wanted the monarchy to pass to his son, and looks like that was going to be out of the picture, and the only remedy that Saul could think of was to kill David, and that way, that cleared the way for Jonathan to be king. But there was more to it. You see in the scriptures that something went into the heart of Saul, an evil spirit, that God sent, by the way. An evil spirit entered Saul. And when the evil spirit entered Saul, there were certain behaviors that demonstrated that the attitude that Saul had came from evil. We have a tendency in our very scientific AI situation today to think that there really is not evil, there is just bad. And some people are bad and some people are good, okay? Jesus was quite clear that these issues are not just part of our domain. There is a spiritual element to this, okay? Over the course of my ministry, there have been a couple of occasions where I've had to confront this raw evil. It was a disembodied evil, okay? It was demonic. Okay, now I've worked in mental hospitals. I know what it's like when somebody is mentally ill. But there is another element out there when it becomes demonic, and it ain't nothing like mental health. Okay, I mean, I've been in combat, but I was never as scared in combat as I was when I was confronted by this manifest evil. And when a person, let's say that I don't like a person, they did something, I'm offended by it, I don't want to have anything to do with them again. Okay, so fine, I walk away. Okay, they're dead to me. They're dead to me. Which means that I don't have to turn anybody else against them because they're dead. Okay?
You mean dead in your mind? Or?
Dead in my mind. Okay, like, okay, when my great-grandfather, when my grandfather married my grandfather, the Orthodox Jew, married a Roman Catholic girl, they had a funeral for him in the Jewish household. Okay, they said Kadesh for my grandfather. He was dead to the family. Okay, same thing happened to my grandmother from the Catholic side, except they didn't go through the ceremony, they just treated her like she was dead. So, and by the way, the only part of the family that ever reconciled was the Jewish side. How Christian is that? But when the evil comes into a person, Satan uses the offense of somebody else as a way of opening a gate into a person's soul, so that they are consumed with an anger, consumed with retribution, consumed with a sense of having been mortally wronged by this other person. And I'm not saying there weren't situations that were bad, okay? Maybe something happened. Maybe that was legitimately not something that was good, okay? But when evil enters into a person's soul, they basically want to utterly destroy that other person. And they want to destroy them to the degree that not only are they dead, but there is no credibility of anything good about that person in anyone's memory. Okay? So when evil takes hold, suddenly you start to see tactics that are consistent with a demonic influence. One of those demonic influences is that they carry the offending event well beyond the implications of that offense. And they start adding on offenses that don't exist. Okay? Today, there is a tremendous resurgence of anti-Semitism in the United States and in Europe. It's almost like Nazi Germany is coming back. And the things that they are saying about Jews and the Jewish community are lies. And they're spreading these things so that not only do I have to hate a Jew, you have to hate a Jew too. And so I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make demonstrations and I'm going to say, you know, from the river to the sea. It's not just that I'm not going to have anything to do with them because I don't like them. I want to annihilate all Jews that exist between the Jordan and the Mediterranean. No Israel, no Jew. Not just removing the state or replacing the state, annihilating all the Jews that are in the state. Okay? When you see that kind of thing happening, and the lengths to which they're willing to go, like on October 7th, okay, the people are so mad at the Jews that they're willing to allow their own people to be destroyed in the process. They use them as human shields. They indoctrinate their children. They do all kinds of things that go way past any offense that they might have incurred. And when you see this constant attacking and a desire not just to be divided from that person, but to divide that person from everybody else, that's demonic. Okay? Why does Satan want us to feel that way? Well, because Satan's a bad guy. But what Satan does is they essentially take an offense that somebody has committed and they use that as a way of occupying the spirit of the person who has been wronged. Because at that point, where the person has been offended, that person is vulnerable to be used by Satan. So what Satan does, Satan picks up an ally in the process. Okay? So, and what really happens is this. That person who is trying to divide everybody else from the person that they hate ends up being so negative and so profoundly wrong about a lot of things about that person that nobody wants anything to do with them. And they begin actually the process of isolating themselves from a community of friendship or family, and they end up with a bitterness and a loneliness in their heart. They're not a pleasant person. They're not somebody who has the joy of Christ. They're not somebody who is interested in any kind of reconciliation. And if I see somebody who is so dead set against reconciliation, that person puts their own soul in tremendous jeopardy. Because also in that Lord's Prayer is, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. If you want to claim the redemption of Christ, that redemption has to be a reality in the way that you live your life with others. So a person who maintains an overwhelming bitterness, where under no circumstances at all will they have any conversation or attitude of redemption with somebody else, that person puts himself in a place where they are not redeemable themselves. And that's another reason why Satan sees this as an opportunity and seizes that soul so he can drag him to hell. That's what's going on. Now, what's happened here, David has committed an offense. I mean, he's not an innocent guy. I'm sorry, he just isn't. Okay, he and Samuel are in cahoots, and there's plenty of reason for Saul to be upset with David. Okay? There's plenty of reason for David to be upset with Saul. Saul has, because of this demonic infusion in Saul, he's actually killed a whole community of priests. He wipes out in the land of Nob, he wipes out a whole community of priests, men, women, children, everybody, because he thinks that they provided some kind of support for David, but they did it ostensibly without a knowledge that David was doing anything against Saul. They thought that David had been sent on a mission by Saul. So they supported David on that mission, and Saul didn't buy it. I don't blame him. But he didn't have to kill everybody in the village. Okay? David's thrown a spear at Saul has thrown a spear at David 2 times. Okay? He threw a spear at Jonathan because Jonathan was close to David. He tells lies about David. Okay, that go well beyond the offense. Okay? So what you're seeing is that Saul is being horribly manipulated by this evil that has been allowed to grow in his soul. But when he gets confronted with an opportunity for redemption, for reconciliation, God supersedes that evil that's in him, and he comes to his senses momentarily. And he realizes there is truth. Something that demons cannot withstand is truth. Okay? And they cannot withstand the presence of God. So in this moment between Saul and David, there's an opportunity for reconciliation that is God-given, because God set up, remember, this whole situation. And there was a decision on the part of one person who could have called for an offense. One person was willing to reconcile. And because that one person was willing to reconcile, reconciliation became a possibility that could transcend all of the evil. So this is a crucial thing, because if there's anything that the New Testament teaches us in Jesus' teachings, is that God is willing to forgive all of our sins, just like we forgive everybody else's. Okay? Somebody asked God about having a problem with their brother and then going down to the altar and receiving God's blessing, and Jesus said, first go settle things with your brother and then come and receive the blessing. Because if you can't reconcile with them, you can't reconcile with God, because you're the offender with God. That's how it works. And yesterday we had a party at my house. Had a lot of people there. Okay, I mean, more than we expected. Close to 80 people. But had there been problems between people that came to that party? Absolutely. Okay? But they sat down and ate together. They swam in my pool together. They talked to each other. And they did that because the ability to sit down and be at peace with someone was so much more valuable than the ability to be at war with them. And it was a happy time. Okay? Does that mean that offenses didn't happen? Of course not. Okay? But the people who came to that party were Christians. And a lot of them had learned through Christ and through the wisdom of years about where to set their priorities. It made a huge difference. Okay? Anyway, that's what I wanted to pass on from this. There are, some really good lessons. In chapter 25, we're going to deal with the death of Samuel. And also, there's some interesting lessons to be learned that are also modern, they're contemporary, with regard to what happens in political conflicts, insurgencies and things like that. So we're going to see some of this unfolding. Understand that while David and Saul have reconciled at this moment, that reconciliation doesn't necessarily last, okay? And also understand that the competition between the two is very real and very lethal. So anyway, we'll get into chapter 25 next time. I hope you had a wonderful 250th celebration. I thought it was spectacular. And I was glad, not only did we see how we celebrated here, there were other countries that were celebrating with us all around the world. And you know what? We welcome it, and they should. So I'll see you next week.
Why did